Super happy to see that so many people had a chance to find a time during the workday. I know that this is not a typical time for us to host online meetups, but really, really happy welcoming everyone. For those of you who are the first timers, I want to say a couple of words about our R9 research community. It's originated in Ukraine, and in about 5 years, community has grown from a couple dozens of participants to more than 2,000 participants, which is great. And over the past few years, our fellow UX researchers also opened a branch in Berlin. So now we are Ukrainian originally, but now international community, which is amazing. And in case you still don't follow us, here are some links in the chat for you could join our discussions and get to know more about our communication that we have in LinkedIn and YouTube, on Spotify. We have a podcast. We have recordings of our previous online meetups. So really, really happy to share this with you, and I hope it will be useful. And obviously I know that this is an English-speaking event, but I know that there are some Ukrainian-speaking folks here, and maybe for those of you who still haven't joined our main chat, please join our R9 channel in Telegram, where you can ask your research-related questions or share your knowledge about UX research. After a pretty long pause, we are back with our online meetups. Amazing, really happy to be here. We have some great news. R9 research community has a new partner, Logitech. And today, in the end of the meeting, author of the most unique and the best question will win the mouse from the Master Series that was actually created for designers. So very interesting new device. And I hope that you will be even more active than typically on this kind of events. Great, we are done with all the intros. Finally, I'm very, very happy to introduce our amazing guest, Kate Towsey. Kate is a research operations guru. She's the author of Research That Scales, Research Operations Handbook. I know that a lot of our members of the community multiple times were referring to the book. Maybe some of you didn't know about it, but Kate is the inventor of the widely used acronym PWDR. People who do research, obviously, I learned that we were butchering the term, and we were saying like PWDR,
Oh, no,
PWDR.
Michaela, you're correct. Initially, it was PWDR, and because I coined the term in 2019, and then probably like a year or two ago, I was in a meeting and someone said powder to me. It was actually Erin May from User Interviews, and I thought,
Amazing.
that's amazing. So I didn't actually originally say powder. I coined PWDR, but it's so cool that it's evolved.
Yeah, great. I think Potter was a very, very, very interesting way to say that. And
Yeah.
also, Kate wrote some of the earliest blog posts about research operations, and actually was the person who put the research ops on the map. So, welcome, Kate. Great pleasure
Thank
having
you.
you with us
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
Obviously, we will all have a chance to ask some questions about the research ops directly. Kate is hosting series of master classes in Europe, in Paris, London, and Barcelona. So you will all have a chance to get to know more about it. But I wanted to start with some questions and then open up to everyone in the audience. Um, I think that people heard a lot about the research ops. I think a lot of us even practice it in a way, but
Mhm.
even maybe without knowing that. But Kate, what would you like to like? What are the couple key ideas about the research ops that you want to make sure that all people understand correctly? It seemed like there were some misunderstanding about what
Yeah.
is the research ops, what is research, who should do what. So let's start
Yeah.
with this.
So the biggest misunderstanding is that it's administration. Like so often I hear that people are they're firefighting. So you hear, oh, I'm so stressed out. I'm doing research operations. Every day is just a nightmare. And very often when I speak to those people, it's because they're not actually designing services and they're not working according to a strategy. And they're not designing systems. And you really can't design systems if you don't know what your strategy is, because systems are by definition specific. And specificity requires a specification, and you need to know which direction you're going in order to specify something. So you have to have a strategy, but very often research ops people are working as these general administrators. They're just responding left and right to whoever shouts the loudest. And it's just, they don't get anywhere because you are busy firefighting. And when do you get a chance to build the systems? So that's one of the biggest misunderstandings that I see. That is becoming less and less over the years, thankfully. I think in part that's due to the book that I wrote, but in big part that's because of the evolution of the research world around us. And people are getting in there and realizing after, research operations is now like 10, 15 years old, kind of officially. It's really 30 years old if you look at the really big companies like Salesforce. But over time, people have just gone, I can't carry on working in a way where I'm just firefighting all day long. I'm burning out. I have to stop and step back and really look at what am I trying to solve here? And so that evolution has happened over time. So that's one of the biggest misunderstandings. Um, do I have a second one now that I've mentioned the first one? I think the second misunderstanding is that research operations is like you have to hire a research operations person to do research ops. And in some ways, that is true. I'm not saying that is not true. But most people start with that as the founding idea of research operations is, well, in order to do research ops, I need to hire a research ops person. And they need to be this generalist with like 5 years of experience in research operations. But operations simply means how you do on a daily basis. It's your habits, it's your practice. As human beings, we typically wake up in the morning, have breakfast, perhaps lunch, dinner. There's certain rituals around how we live our lives and how we choose to live our lives. And it's the same in how your research organization operates. It is operating, whether you have a research ops person or you have a research ops strategy or you've thought about this or not, it is operating. You are doing things because you exist. All that research operations is doing is coming in and saying, if you step back and think very logically about how you operate, and then put repeatable, scalable systems in place that enable you to operate in really efficient and effective ways, now you're expanding your impact and your value in the organization. So I want people to start there rather than start with the headcount. And once you've got an idea of what your goals are in the organization, what your weaknesses are, where you need to strengthen, then go and hire a very particular operational type person to solve that problem. So to make that more grounded, here's an example. Um, Say you do some research. Researchers are amazing at research, right? And yet we don't often apply those skills into the organization, not just through doing a research study, but through observation, through listening, through picking up the cues of what stakeholders want in the organization, where the founders' energies are. So say you look and you're going, actually, we've got our recruiting's pretty good. We've even maybe you've got a pretty good library. The problem that we have is that the organization doesn't trust us. They don't know who we are, or they don't trust us, or both. So if you've got an operational headcount, your best bet then is to go and hire an amazing propagandist, like an amazing marketeer who can come in and put operations around marketing your organization to the rest of the organization, marketing your team to the rest of the organization. So you build trust because now your democratization efforts, your recruiting efforts, your library efforts are actually going to land. So those are the two things, just to recap. Number one, research operations is all about systems design. It's not purely about the administration. All systems will eventually create administration, but that's the second thing. The administration should be good, useful, scalable administration, not just administration at the start. And then the second thing is, don't think that you need to hire a headcount to do operations. You are operating, but you need to decide how you operate and why you're operating, and then hire a very particular human being, a non-researcher, to fill that gap.
That's very interesting because it seems like in all the discussions that we had with colleagues over the past year, maybe it feels like people from research, they are considering this switch to the research ops, and it's
Yeah.
based on what you just. And could you please tell us more about this maybe career path in terms of research ops? Is it better to switch from research, like quant, qual, just daily research work, or
Yeah.
is it someone outside of research realm who has a very specific different set of skills that
Yeah.
researchers typically don't?
Both. Both. So if you are a researcher, you have fantastic skills for research operations. Now, hidden in there is something that I've just said that I want to reiterate in slightly different words. Because you are operating, you need to decide how you operate. That's really research operations. And to give examples of that is, well, are we going to focus on ethnographic research? I was actually speaking to a research leader earlier in the week. I recorded a podcast with her, and she leads a team of 30 researchers at a takeaway service, quite a big one in London. And they have started to re-include ethnographic research into their practice. That's a very specific decision. Hopefully it's a strategic decision. Like actually we're missing this kind of element in our research practice. Our stakeholders are wanting something where they can actually see a takeout delivery guy on a motorbike delivering hamburgers around the place, and we can understand what their day-to-day life is about. And post-pandemic, we've gotten stuck on Zoom and we've forgotten how to get back in the field. So she's made a very strategic decision to do that. And so part of her operations then, therefore, is going to be consent forms for field research, safety measures for field research, uh, field kits for how you record and photograph stuff when you're out in the field. So certainly that is the operational stuff that bubbles out of that idea of we need to get back out in the field because this is what our stakeholders are going to relate to. So again, that's the idea of operating. So once you have those ideas about how you want to operate, then you get the skill set that you want. So to go back to answering your question about the researchers moving into research ops or other people from outside of the field, both are valuable because when you're designing research operations, you're specifying the system that you need to build. Ideally, you have a research leader who really understands research methodology. Is ethnographic the right thing to do here? Maybe it isn't. Maybe we need to do diary studies. Maybe it's other longitudinal studies. Maybe it's like quant or qual research. You know, they need to make those methodological decisions. And then you need the operational person to come in and join with those strategic research decisions, those methodology decisions to make it actually happen, right? If you've got someone who's moved over from research into research ops and they have that strategic, deep sense of methodology and when to apply what type of thing, when to leverage what type of person, skill, cohort, you know, you name it, that is amazing. So if you are in research and you're a strategic thinker, you are an amazing research ops leader because you can do those two things. You can decide the research strategy, decide the research operation structures, and you can kind of bring the whole picture together. Does that make sense? Am I making some sense here? Great. Um, but if as the research leader, you decide your strategy, you want to operate it, and part of that is that you decide, actually, we really need to get together a research library. Everyone's favorite thing at the moment is a research library for good reason. I think they're brilliant. But at that point, you wouldn't hire me. Like, I would not say yes to a job for a research library because I'm not a librarian. Like, I'm simply not. When I was working at Atlassian and I wanted to build a library, I hired a librarian who had never heard the word UX before, never come across it, but had 20 years of librarianship experience. And she did a phenomenal job because it took her 3 months basically of a little bit of training to bring her up to speed on the researchy type stuff. We had amazing research leaders feeding in strategy and what we needed to do. And then we brought her into the mix, and she's a phenomenal librarian. And so, wow. So it really is like a case of both, and it depends on what do you want to do as to who you hire and what skills you bring in.
And from your experience, what are the typical starting points for research ops? Because I remember I saw this "What is research ops" map. I was actually
Yeah,
shocked with how many things are in there and how many things I
yeah.
specifically was missing. Because as you mentioned, like research library, maybe recruitment, incentives management, maybe those are the
Governance.
top of mind things, but there are so many other stuff there, and especially like internal communication part. Like in your opinion, what is the typical progression? What people
Mm,
start with and what they typically come to in
yeah,
different setups of teams.
yeah. So typically, I'm not saying this is ideal, but typically
Hmm.
people be hired in with a laundry list of basically all of those elements. I've updated from the bubble chart that you're talking about. I've updated those in my book to the 8 elements of research ops after now 5 years of kind of on the ground experience. And because I realized some things were missing out of that bubble chart. One primary one was money and metrics. Like you can't run an organization without having money to spend to buy things, and then measuring it all with metrics. Um, so yeah, so people will come in and they'll have this laundry list of things in the job description, and basically it's all of those elements: recruiting, knowledge management, money and metrics, supporting people in using all these tools. Democratization is in the midst of all that support, and so on and so forth. Um, it is not humanly possible for one person to do all of that, but many people will enter a research ops role with that kind of list. In that case, the way that you have to, the skills that you need to bring to that is stakeholder management, because in order to do all these things, you have to go and make friends with customer services to help build your recruiting capabilities, or customer support and sales. You have to go to privacy and legal and get their help to help you do all your consent forms and that kind of stuff. You have to make friends with finances to start getting the money flowing in the correct ways. And so you've got to be a very stakeholder oriented, friendly human being who can convince and sell, convince this team of people that they want to give you the time of day to get you the decent consent form. And so what you end up doing is you kind of have like an octopus with 8 kind of tentacles across the organization. You need to get everybody to work for you so that you amplify yourself. You basically like 8x yourself by making friends and putting it all together. But you as the individual, you have to have that systems design, service design, for a term that is very close to our field in UX. You have to have that service design vision and the strategic vision to go, actually, these 3 things are the most important things for me to do first. Maybe I don't make friends with all 8 teams across the organization. I start with these 3. And this is how the system's going to work in the long run, but I'm going to start here. And that's really where you start as a sort of a generalist team of one. After that, you might, if you've done your job well and you've shown real value to the organization, you've been measuring, you've been pushing those numbers and sentences up about how you've given something positive for the money you've cost and the effort you've drawn out of other teams, then very often you will get given a headcount from somewhere at some point, even this day and age. And that's when you start to look at it and go, okay, now do I need a librarian, or do I need someone who works in finances, or do I need a marketeer, some unique skill that you need to really bolster your team?
Amazing. And I will ask the last question because I have a ton of questions, but I would like to open to everyone else to ask their questions. But one more thing, you mentioned like showing the impact and obviously influencing, and having an impact for the product development and for team building is very important topic that a lot of people are talking about. Specifically for research ops, what are the
Hmm.
ways to measure the impact of research ops? Because sometimes I'm pretty sure that maybe if not all of us on the call, but a lot of us already heard like had a chance to talk to leadership and hear like, why do we need this? Why don't
Yeah.
researchers can do this? So are there any other measurements beyond efficiency maybe that are
Hmm.
important when we talk about return of on investments for research jobs?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I really love this question because I get it all the time. And for me, what it's really about is it's going back to, why do you exist and what value are you delivering? So what often happens, and this goes back to your first question about, what are the biggest misassumptions about research operations, is that sort of generalist notion I'll use a very common example. Research ops person arrives into the organization, they have their onboarding day, and the very next day it's like fix participant recruitment or build a library. We'll stick with the first example. If you just go about fixing participant recruitment, it's very, very difficult to truly show value with that. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to show big enough value versus the cost that you're spending. It's very expensive to recruit. And most often our salaries are pricey for the organization too. It's not just our salary, it's the fact that we have a seat in the office, perhaps. It's our everything that goes with you being a person in the room. It makes us expensive. And so you've got to show a huge amount to validate the fact that you're there. And so my advice, and comes from learning, by the way, it's not that I've always done this perfectly. I know because I've done it the wrong way, is go and find out, in the case of participant recruitment, who are the most important users or customers in this organization? Like, where is the money? If the organization, let's stick with that takeout example. If the organization is saying that actually this year, financial year or the next 3 financial year, we are expanding our operations to Japan, and then suddenly you realize actually we've got to get really, really excellent at recruiting people in Japan. That's a different culture, it's a different demographic. And so don't just build a huge, big blob of a panel and hope that that's going to solve people's problems and show value. Build a panel that is very specific to Japan, and do an excellent job of that, because that's where the organization's placing its attention. And now when you measure and you say, well, we've gone from being able to recruit 5 people a quarter from Japan to recruiting 150 people at will who are excellent participants. And this is for one of the top priorities in the organization. We're supporting in these ways. Now you've got a story to tell. So that's the first thing with metrics. It goes back to have purpose behind what you're measuring. Because what happens is if you just have this blob of a panel that really had no real purpose behind it, and you're busy measuring, it takes a lot of work to measure. I know I've had a full-time person doing operations metrics on my team in the past. And then you're delivering all of these amazing numbers, but no one cares, because no one cares about a blob of a panel. Some maybe designers across the organization go like, well, this is easier than it used to be, but it's still not fantastic. And that's the only story you can tell. Just to finish off that point, there's actually 2 more points I want to make on this. Those who are really listening closely probably would have thought of the second point already. The first point is that if you create this, let's just stick with the example of Japan, you create your phenomenal recruiting panel for Japan, or you get the right agency, or whatever your strategy is for recruiting this cohort really efficiently. And you do an amazing job of it, and it's seen and it's measured, and everybody knows that you've been in fundamental support to this important goal. It's likely that when another goal pops up in the organization and people now decide, actually, we want to spend time with the riders, the people who deliver the fast food, they're gonna give you headcount to do the same thing. And very often what happens is the systems that you've set up for your recruiting for Japan are going to be duplicated. You can repeat them into your next panel. So you're not building from scratch. You've got all this stuff and experience to build with. And so as you start to expand with real focus across the organization, you build something really vast, which could be over months or years. So that's point number one. The second thing is, which is the one that I mentioned that hopefully some people have gone, oh, but hang on a second, is that I call these kinds of efforts, these really focused strategic efforts, verticals. Because oftentimes what you'll do with that kind of vertical effort is you will be working with immediate stakeholders at sort of maybe a mid-management level. You might be working with VPs or directors, and then you might even get up to CEO founders with the kind of outcomes you're delivering, because you're drawn into the company strategy, right? But that doesn't mean that your day-to-day stuff, like your run-of-the-mill stuff, is going to go away. So that doesn't mean that you don't do anything for just day-to-day recruiting that's never going to be noticed by anyone. You have to put in that, like, let's just get a great question, user interviews, rally, like name your participant recruitment platform or your agency, get it in place. It's one tool. It's kind of like canteen service. It's your McDonald's, right? Get that in place. Everyone can kind of do their recruiting, run of the mill, kind of keep the lights on type stuff. Most people get stuck there, and then they wonder why they get laid off, because no one could really see their value, because they were just like McDonald's, worse, actually, an unbranded canteen on the corner. And that's why you have to have these verticals of like, we're going to look after Japan. Oh, now we're doing takeaway riders. Now we're going to do that. And you're kind of drilling up into the company strategy.
Amazing. A lot of things to think about for sure. I will open up for questions from the audience, and please, I encourage everyone to share your questions in the chat, and please feel free to join with voice and camera and ask your question directly. So we
Yeah.
have a question from Olga. Would you like to join with the voice?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, my name is Olga. I'm working for the biggest Ukrainian marketplace, and we have a wide team, and we have two research ops in our team, which is great. But right now, like they have like very extensive workload, so their role now limits only to like maintaining recruitment, consents, and any money we should pay to our users. So, but we have a lot of different programs within the team, like user days, research democratization, also user panels, and seems like we need to lead them by our own. So research ops cannot do that. And my question would be, should like in ideal world, should research ops be owners of those programs like democratization, like user days and so on? And that's the one question. And the second question is there any difference between program manager and research ops, or should like maybe program manager is a like evolvement of research ops? Because from what I can see, like research ops are doing some particular like granular work, and program managers, at least in our organization, they are like leading the whole programs that may include a few ops people who
Yeah,
are
yeah,
helping. Yeah, so that
yeah.
would be two of my questions. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Olga. I'm going to answer them back to front in the sense that I'm going to speak about program management and research ops first. So program management is it's about running programs, right? And it's getting organized and delivering things in its simplest sense. And in research operations, or even in being a researcher, or really any role, we've all got to be organized and we've got to have a plan for things and deliver them. So research operations is often like delivering. I spoke about the octopus with the 8 tentacles across the organization. Like you've got to be a program manager to be able to manage that level of complexity and deliver a whole lot of things at once. If you're not a program manager and you don't have those kinds of skills, you're going to be in trouble. Like you're not going to be able to get that together and actually deliver things on time and know when to measure and do all the stakeholder management. So yes, research operations are program managers, but then we have to also be systems designers, service designers. And we've got to have research expertise to a degree to be able to design a system that actually delivers decent research, right? Like ultimately, the sausage factory that we create has to pop out excellent research sausages on the other side. It can't just be about volume, it needs to be about quality as well. And not even just about the outputs. It's about how the outputs are input back into people's heads, which is like mind blowing for me. We're working in a world where our final product is understanding. Like our final product is that people understand something for themselves and then do something about it or make a decision. Like that's incredible. That's what we're trying to like operationalize and scale. And so you've got to be a program manager, you've got to be a service designer or a system designer, and you've also got to understand that what you're trying to do is get people to learn and understand and take action, which involves us creating systems that by nature create trust. So we've got to also be like psychologists in a sense, try and understand how do we develop trust in this organization. If you do not get the trust thing right, you can have all the most amazing systems in the world, the most phenomenal recruiting, the best library in the world, and it will mean absolutely nothing. So multiple levels to this role. And that's not to say you have to do it all on your own as a team of one. You've got to kind of try and get those skills in, learn them, either get them into your own head or hire them in or find them in the organization, make friends with people and try and learn on the way and experiment. So Olga, that's the first question. The second one was the owners of democratization and all those sorts of programs. I think it's any time that there is a research initiative going across the organization, like anything that's going on, like anything you do will require some type of system in place if it's going to be done regularly. So typically when research ops is best used is when there is a program that's happening and it's going to be constantly done, either for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, because that's when you need to now create a system. So if I think about a food analogy, if you want to make a cake once a year for your birthday, like you do not need a system through that for that. Like figure it out. But if you're going to start making cakes and selling them, and that's your thing, like you're going to be a whole lot happier and more successful if you get a system together. Yeah, okay, we have a massive big oven, we've got this, and you probably are going to be required by the laws of the land, that you have food licensing and like all the sort of stuff that comes with it. That is when you call in cake operations or research operations in our case. So if you're democratizing and you're wanting it to be an ongoing, repeatable, scalable, efficient, impactful thing, as opposed to a one-off, like, let's just try this out, that's you're going to call in research operations to figure out, like a smart ops person will start to look at it and go, okay, what is in here that is proportional, that what like is repeated? How big and how often is it? Like, are we going to be recruiting 100 people a quarter or 500 people a quarter or five? And how many reports are we looking at storing? How many videos? How many consent forms? They're going to be counting. How big is the system? How important is the system? And how many of the outputs that do I need? And how important are those outputs? And so, and it might not even be about scale as in the sense of like size, and you're not always going for like hundreds or thousands of things. It might be that actually this is the CEO or the founder's like pet project right now, and probably will be for the next 3 years. So it's super, super important. This is high stakes decision making. And so this is something that we want to make sure that maybe we set up a small system, but it guarantees that we're going to deliver excellent value, like excellent quality research at the end of the day. And so that's where your operations persons comes in to like really think through, what are we actually wanting to achieve here? Is it size? What size? Is it quality? What quality?
Amazing. Thank you, Kate. We have Olga just double checking if you wanted to follow up on something. If no, we have a couple more questions.
I can see you smiling, so I feel like I've hit the spot there. Great.
Great. We have a couple more questions from Natalia from New Image. There are four of them actually. So I will start with the first one. What is the biggest myth about research ops that you'd like to destroy, but you know that audience is still not ready? We started a little bit with some misconceptions about research ops in the
Mhm.
beginning, but if there is anything you would like to add to this topic. So the biggest myth in research ops that you would like to destroy, but you know that audience is still not ready.
Yeah, okay. Should I go for that one now?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay.
If the
I was
floor.
getting ready to note down four questions, but okay, biggest myth. Um, I think the key to this question, where it's different from that first one, is like the audience is not ready. Um, okay, I've got it. Right. So this is actually based on some sort of let me start again. I spend a lot of my time talking to research ops people. Actually, I nowadays spend more time speaking to research ops folk than I do actually doing research ops myself. And so I start, and I do a lot of work on documentary production and podcasting and that kind of stuff. And so I end up being like a trend spotter for the space. And one of the big trends that I'm seeing is that particularly over the last little while, where researchers have been laid off. Research ops have been laid off too, but not to the same degree as researchers. And is organizations are convinced that they need research. They're just not convinced that they need researchers all of the time, at the moment, at least. I think that will change, but at the moment they're not there. What is happening though is, because of democratization, is they're saying, oh, I don't think we need the researchers. We're just going to throw the researchers out and keep the democratization. Now, product and design and engineering, whoever can do the research themselves. Great, we've saved ourselves a couple of $1 million a year. That's where the mindset is right now. What is happening now is they're going, oh, hang on a second, but we still need those people to come in and set up the systems that enable all these people to do research across the organization. And so they're hiring in, I've seen this several times now, research ops person in an organization with no researchers and no head of research. And they've been given the task of setting up all the research systems. I think this is really interesting, because it was one time I heard about this, and then like more and more it's come up. And I think what's going to happen, my kind of crystal ball says that what's going to happen is that this will become a trend. It's very good for research ops at the start, but what they will start to realize is they don't actually have the conductor of the orchestra. So if we think of an orchestra, you'll have someone who's there to set up their whole orchestra and make sure that all the different pieces of the orchestra are in the right place. And you have the musicians themselves, which we can call the people who are doing research, right, of various levels of skill. And then you have the conductor at the front of the orchestra who knows exactly the piece and when we should emphasize this and when we should do this and when we should finish the piece. And they're going to realize at some point that they've got musicians and they've got someone to set up all the equipment and their instruments, but they do not have a conductor. Because in my mind, the conductor is the research leader who knows we should be doing ethnographic research. We should use AI moderation, but only at this level, not there, for this type of research. And in this order, maybe we do AI moderation, but then we filter that up into unmoderated research, then we filter that up into moderated qual with like just a small group of people. We need someone to conduct and make those decisions. That's the strategy. And I think organizations who are going down this road are going to figure that out and then hire in research leaders, but into a completely different role. So that's it's sort of a myth, but also prediction of, I think, what I'm seeing and where I think we're going. One more part to
Thank
that,
you.
actually. Sorry, Michaela, something that I'm seeing is that also what's happening is that research operations leaders, those who are really, really at the cutting edge of things, are becoming, they're creating platforms. And those research platforms, it's not even about research anymore, it's about insights. And organizations are realizing, oh, actually, we've got now all of this data and insights from quant and qual sources across the organization that aren't being funneled into any useful way. And now I've got AI potentially making much more data for us with AI moderation and all the rest of it. It's happening and will happen more and more. And so there are these research ops people here who are going to bring it all together and set up systems that enable us to kind of utilize this data. And that's becoming more and more a theme as well, which I think is really fascinating.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I know that Natalia has a couple more questions, but I see
Yeah,
5 more people in the list. So we will rotate people who ask questions and then come back to the first ones. So we also have
great.
the
Thanks,
question
Natalia.
from Lubov. If you would like to join with the voice, feel free to do that. If no, I could also read the question.
Thank you, Misha. Yeah, I'm a bit sick, so sorry for that. First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for your time. It's extremely helpful meeting for me. And my question was about that balance between depth and scalability, because our topic is scaling research operations. So on one hand, we need time and effort to deliver really meaningful insights, and I know this needs time. But from the other hand, where is the balance between quality and this scaling, and how do you manage this expansion and excellent quality?
Yeah. So the analogy that I've always got an analogy. You'll if you've read my book, you'll know that there's lots of stories in there. Um, Everybody might want to go to a Michelin star restaurant, right? But does everybody actually, in order to just to kind of live their life and be nourished and have energy to get up in the day, we don't all need to go to a Michelin star restaurant every day. Maybe you want to go once a year for your birthday or whatever, but it just needs to be a special occasion. Um, and it's similar in research. Everybody thinks that they need like the top quality research insights in order to make decisions, but do they really? And as researchers, you want to give top quality insights because you are smart, proud human beings who want to deliver top quality. And so, but do you really need to give the top quality to that person? And so what I don't see that we're doing enough in organizations is getting these layers of like, sorry, dude, you're a McDonald's person. Like, sorry for you. That's what it is. Or actually, you're making your own sandwiches at home. You're not even getting to McDonald's. And then the next level of like, well, we're willing to kind of fund you for something a little bit more upmarket. It's like an excellent buffet. And you'll go up the line to like, actually, this is such important decision making. You are going Michelin star. Like, we're pulling out all the stops for you. We don't do that. We just go, product manager pitches up and gives us a head count, and we go, you're getting the best. But maybe they're not working on the most important thing in the organization. So as soon as you start to put structuring and like layers into your system of like, Like the world is not equal. It just simply isn't. And the world is not equal inside organizations. And so we need to have a certain level of service, like, hi, product manager or designer or whoever, I'm sorry, but you're not working on the company's most like favorite, company's top priority right now. And so here's a tool, go and do your own recruiting and we'll give you some training and you're on your way. But if the most important priority, the PM for that comes into town and asks for things, well, they might be getting your best of everything, best insights, best everything. So that is how you scale, because you cannot scale quality for everybody all the time. It is simply not possible. You can only, I'm hesitating because there's two different sides to scaling, right? There is scaling the thing, the insight or the machinery, and there is scaling impact. And they're not the same thing. You can have a system that scales like reports, but the reports could have no impact because, or because they're not like for many reasons they could just not be hitting the nail on the head. But you've got this machine that's just spitting out tons and tons of things that no one wants. That's not scaling. That's just creating a lot of stuff. What you want to be doing is getting in those levels, and then what you're doing is you're going, okay, so I need to turn around 500 of these things. It's got to be at this level of quality, no more than that. And then you're really efficient, and that next level, and that next level, and that next level. That's the best way that I can describe it, but it really does it takes stepping back from the mania that is our world today with Slack messages and Teams or whatever system you're on, WhatsApps, like LinkedIn messages, like you cannot think straight with all that going on. Like no one can. Nervous systems are not built for that. So what you have to do is you've got to step away, take a week out, a quarter, like genuinely. I know it sounds impossible. It is totally possible. I've done it for years. When I was working at Atlassian in a leadership team, every quarter I took a week out, no meetings, no meetings in my calendar, no Slack, only morning and evening to check Slack, and no one died. But what I was able to do was step back and look at strategies from the organization, look at technologies going outside in the outside world, read those articles that were in that little tab that says read me, that never gets read, do all those kinds of things, and look at our own operating reports from within research operations. And then you can start to see, actually, we've got an altitude or like a level here that's coming in. We're not doing that, or we're putting too much into this project that is worth nothing to the organization. It's day-to-day stuff. They don't care. That's my number one advice. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you. It was very helpful metaphor about restaurant. I like it really.
Great. Well, you'll never look at McDonald's the same again.
Great. We also have a question from Sophia. Would you like to join with the voice?
Sure. I was just wondering, how do you justify to the C-level and all the, highest levels, which is not yours? For example, I'm senior UX researcher right now, but I'm not sure how I'm able to approach, I don't know, C-level with my own strategy. So I was thinking, how can you probably justify that to them, or how do you communicate about that? I'm talking about, I'm referring to drilling up. You were saying about that earlier.
Yeah.
So if you could share your tips, maybe
Yeah.
I would be glad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My advice to you is, and it really depends on the size of your organization and how, the hierarchy of the organization and things. But you don't have to actually go and speak to C-level to get what you want from C-level. The perfect example of this is, and this is actually a good example in terms of a lot of the things I've been saying around strategy and finding vertical value in the organization. So at some point at Atlassian, I would say a company I worked for, but it was Atlassian. They had put in a big priority that was coming from the founders of focusing on accessibility. If anyone with access needs has used Atlassian's products, they will know that they were bad in terms of accessibility. They've put a lot of work into improving that. Now, one of the things is that companies like Apple, but also the US government and various other governments, they will not buy tools that don't meet access requirements, WCAG and that kind of stuff. And so there was all this money being pumped into accessibility. And I noticed that this was a key part of the organization strategy. And as part of this, they hired a phenomenal head of accessibility, really fantastic guy. And I went and made friends with him because I thought, well, if they're going to be doing all this accessibility work, they're going to be doing research. And that's my camp. And they're going to need to recruit people with living with disabilities, and they're going to need consent forms, and they're going to need all these things. Specifically, all of our tools need to, like our e-gift platform, that I need to make sure that that's also friendly for people living with disabilities. And so I went and made friends with him. I said to him, hey, what are you doing around accessibility? And he was very good at building. He was like, yes, we actually really do need this. And I think you're just the person to help me deliver this. Amazing. What a partnership. And so he built that into his strategy, which he then presented directly to the founders. And he got the money and he gave me the headcount, and off we went. I think I got 4 headcount out of that and a whole lot of money to now set up an entire team around research operations for accessibility. So these are the kinds of opportunities to look out for. It doesn't need to be that you like try and like wend your way into a meeting or find yourself in an elevator or whatever the situation is, and do your best to try and pitch research or research operations. Spot these opportunities across the organization, and it all goes back to be able to step back from your day-to-day life, because it's busy. It will be busy. I don't even have to ask you that question. And have a look at like, what do the founders care about? And you will know what they care about. It is because it's what they're funding. Like where they put their money is what they care about. So if you ever get stuck with trying to figure out where the strategy is, or you can't find one, go and speak to your finance friends and ask the finance guy, where are the founders putting the money? And they will tell you, and they might even tell you before the strategy comes out where the money is going. And then you can put your efforts into that, because like basically follow the money and you will pretty much come up right every time.
Okay, thank you very much. That was really useful.
Great. My
And
pleasure.
not
Thanks, Sophia.
for Sophia, I'm just writing for myself as well because it's like a very simple suggestion, but actually very, very powerful. So yeah, thank you so much for that, Katie.
My
We have
pleasure.
a couple more questions. I know that we're almost out of time, so just checking, Kate, if you have a couple more minutes.
Yeah, that's cool. We'll catch up on stuff.
Great. So next question is from Simina. Hope I pronounced right. If you'd like to join with voice, feel free to do that.
Yeah, you did amazing, by the way. Kate, thank you for your time. And I love your analogies, by the way. They are lovely.
Thank you.
So we often complain that we don't have a seat at the table. And
Mhm.
a lot of times, that's the end of it. Oh, we want to sit at the table, blah, blah, blah. It's not happening. And we sit in a corner and watch. But I
Yeah.
wonder, what can we actually do to change the perspective? So if the table is square, maybe it should be round, and maybe we should be the one polishing the corners. And how
Mhm.
can we just take a chair and sit at that table and somehow secure that seat in time?
Mhm. Good. I like the analogy in return. You're gonna have like McDonald's tables, restaurant, and all sorts of analogies in your mind. Um, I have to think about that for a second, because you'll hear this is the dog in the background, who's thinking with me. Um, I think the big question for me is like why you want a seat at the table, Samina. So we've got a little bit of noise behind me, but it'll go away in a second. Um, what do you want? Like, what do you actually want to achieve by having a seat at the table? And so that's the big thing. Like, once you get to the table, what do you want to do once you are there? I have found, just on a very personal note in my career, that um, by doing the things that are meaningful in the organization, you just get given a seat at the table. You don't have to like sell yourself into it or fight for it or try and like figure it out. When you line yourself up with the priorities of the organization, you're delivering vertical value that people can see all the way up to the upper layers of the organization. You get, to the question from earlier, I'm trying to remember who, from Olga, I think that's right. You get out of the sort of rut of just doing the next thing for anyone who asked for it and had a head count, and you try and get yourself into a place where you do that, but you're also doing kind of elevated work. Eventually you get noticed because you're doing something valuable, and then you get given a seat at the table. And once you're there, you have a purpose because you came with a purpose. You don't have to now like try and sell yourself. People already know about you. So hopefully that makes sense to you, Samina, but that's how it's like tended to work for me in the past. It's sort of find out what people like and work play to those, and they will like you back and they will want to get to know you. Like honestly, I just don't think it's more complicated than that. It's just on a bigger, different scale. Um, and you might not even need a seat at the, this was, I think, I'm trying to remember names around here. We had Leo Bob's story. You might not even need a seat at the big table. Maybe you can do the most amazing work in the organization just by hanging out with the next up, the VP, director, or some head of something in a different part of the organization.
That was a lovely answer. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for asking it. It was a good challenging one. I haven't had that one before.
We have two more questions. Anna, your question about the B2B organization. Would you like to join?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Kate. Your answers to previous question give me a thought that, yeah, my question is, if you had to start once again in a B2B organization with low research maturity, what is the one thing you would set up early to make scaling smoother, like later? I'm on such
Yeah.
a situation now, yeah, and it's quite challenging.
Yeah. Okay. How many people are you working with? How many researchers or how many people with powders?
I am the only one, and I am
Yeah,
the first researcher in the company, and now I am doing both like operations and like hand.
research.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And are you helping other people do research as well, or is it just you doing research?
Only me, but in some project, like product managers can do some kind of interviews or something similar to personas building. But the main thing I'm doing by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I asked that was because if you had like dozens or hundreds of people in the organization doing research, I'd say you've got a lot of work on your hands. But one of the things to do is to go back to the analogy of a canteen. Just set up, get we're so blessed these days. When I first started in ops, there was no such thing as all these amazing purpose-built research tools. And now it's not a just, it takes time, but you can procure a tool, you can get that on board, and then recruiting sorted. Like not sorted, but it's better than it was. Before there was nothing and now there is something. No one's starving. There is something there. And it's a vast improvement. So I would say that if you were doing that's where I would have gone, is just set up those basic keep the lights on things and then go after your vertical as a start. But where you are, and I think my answer will be surprising to you, the best thing that you can do right now is set up a library. And the
Okay.
reason I say that is because although there's just one of you, a library is basically like a loudspeaker. If there's just one of you, I have to use my fingers again. If there's only one of you and you can only do so much work, and say your stakeholders, a PM or a designer over here, or whoever they are, and an engineer, whoever it is, and you're going to work with them, well, then you make this person happy and they love you. And then when the project's done, we're fickle human beings, we forget, right? And now you move on to another one person, and you can only in a year do so many projects. I'm going to guess, maybe 20. How many projects a year do you think you do? Like
15.
15? Yeah, I was going to say 20. So after an entire year, you've really probably only really impressed 15 people and then the immediate team around them. Like it's difficult to really expand your scope if that's all you're going to do. But if you put a library in place and you do that really well, and maybe you can dig into some budget that no one else has spent, which is a question I'll answer in a moment because this is really important. But maybe you can even hire a librarian for 3 months to come in and kind of help you set up something. Although there's only 15 reports that you are doing, maybe there are other people across the organization who are doing some research. Maybe there's some content that's coming out of marketing who are doing research. So maybe you could be the person who brings the research that is actually happening in the organization together. And then what you have is you've got your 15 reports or whatever's come out of the projects you've done. Maybe it's many more than that. And then you've got all this other content, or even perhaps you're accessing external research. And now you can start to create some kind of visible collection of what you as an individual are doing that maybe 100 or 200 people could access and get value out of. And so instead of now just have 15 stakeholders and their immediate teams that have like, oh, Anna's great, you've got, they think you're great, but then also you've got like 100, 200, 300 people who access this library who have hopefully gotten some value out of you. So it's for you to go and do the research to try and understand what kind of content are people looking for regularly. Also think back to the answer that I had about the layers, you know, even if you're only looking after 15 people during the year, which is still a lot for one human being, do they all need to have like 100% of you, or could some of them only have 30 and then they can give some more to that person? You know, like, can you structure your the stuff that you deliver in a way that you can kind of just expand your scope a bit more? These are the things that I would encourage you to think about. Start to compartmentalize and break apart all the bits that make up Anna the researcher, and see if you can, if there's any part of that that you can expand, in terms of either amounts that you're able to put out, value you're able to put out, the level of stakeholder you're able to engage with, or a library that helps to kind of amplify your reach within the organization.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's really brilliant. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. So, Michaela, I just wanted to add one thing in there, because I've mentioned things like going and getting money for a librarian, and many of you will be going like, how is that ever going to happen? So here is the tip. Maybe some of you have done this already. I have built a lot of things using this strategy alone over like a couple of decades. So every organization will either work on a quarterly or an annual budget. And every team will get given budgets within those quarters. And depending on how your organization works, you have to have spent your budget by the end of the quarter. The finance friend that you have will know exactly what those budgets are, and they'll know who has been really naughty and they've asked for money, but they have not spent it. People are very good at asking for money, but they're not always very good at planning to spend it on time, which means at the end of the quarter or the financial year, there will be a whole lot of budget sitting there unspent. And the finance person will be far happier if it was spent in a very useful way, because that makes them look better. So the way you get that money is that you make sure, spot your project. Oh, I want to hire, I've done this before. I want to hire a content strategist to come and help me improve our playbooks and our support material. But I don't have the money for it, and there's no one I can hire internally, so I need the money. So I put together the master services agreement, pushed this content strategist through the procurement with no money. They knew that. I communicated that early on. I just didn't raise the PO, the purchase order. Then 2 months later, finance person says, yes, the design team over there did not spend their 150,000 US dollars or whatever it was. And I said, great, I can help you with that. I have got just the project already raised on an MSA. All that procurement, all I've got to do is raise the PO and spend the money. Next thing, I've got a content strategist for 6 months. But what sometimes happens, depending on the organization, is that they will say, well, you have to have spent this money within 2 months. But the work is like the actual work you want done takes, say, 3 months or 6 months. Everybody does this. It's naughty. They will know that you do it. You just never admit it. What you do is you have to work with a content strategist you trust, that they will actually do 6 months worth of work. They will deliver the value. But you just do the full invoicing, tell everybody that, you know, all the invoicing is like the work is done, and you've pre-bought yourself someone for 6 months to get the work done. And that has worked an absolute charm for me in the past. And many, many people will do that to use unspent budget from someone else's budget. Finance person's very happy. You get someone on board that you weren't going to be able to afford, and you get to move forward.
Amazing. I think that those are the tips and tricks that people on your masterclass would be able to learn from you. I know that we have one more question, if you don't mind, the last one for
Yeah,
today,
sure.
and
Let's
we'll
go for
wrap
it.
up. So we have one question from Irina. Please join us with the voice if you want to.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate. And my name is Ira. I'm user experience researcher and lead of my UX research team. And thank you so much. I've definitely grabbed some really, really good ideas, helpful ideas for me. for my job. Thank you so much. And my question is about the what should I, as a research leader, keep in mind when I try to build the research ops system in a very fast changing environment, for a very fast growing company, when I think, oh, it should be useful for company, for team, for business as well. At the same time, I have a very limited resources.
Yeah.
And I really wonder, and I like to hear your thoughts on what makes the research ops system sustainable when it's constantly changes, when
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes it's very high risk when you focus your resources to some things we built, for example, knowledge management system, and at the same time
Yeah.
you think that that maybe stakeholders needs changes, some business
Yeah.
request changes, and
I've got a very specific answer to this. It's something that I wrote about in my book as well. And there is a quote in there, I forget now who said it, but brilliant quote. I remember reading it and going, wow, this answers all these questions about change and how you manage change, because tech, like now it's so changeable, but before it was even changeable. So if you think about housing, for another analogy, when you build a house, you've got bricks. And it doesn't matter what the fashion of architecture is at that point, you can still use this brick to build whatever shape you want, right? Same as I remember he in his quote said, I remember his name just now, but he said like sandwiches, like you have two bits of bread, and then depends on what you put on the inside. But the basic ingredients are exactly the same. It's exactly the same in research operations. The trick is when you're in a very changeable environment, which many of you are nowadays, and it can drive you nuts, because I have had it it's like, yes, we're going to go in with diary studies or something. And then I go like 6 months to procure this diary study tool. By the time it's procured, no one's interested in diary studies, and the tool has been paid for and sitting there. So here's the trick. Step back again, take that week off every quarter, and look at all the bits and pieces you've got going on in your research. See if you can find within that things that are not changeable. So it's difficult for me to give an example because I don't know your space, but there will be, when you sit and look at it and you look for the bricks and the sandwich, that loaf, the slices of bread, the things that are going to be like constant and not changeable. And those are the things you want to put in like a permanent system for, or something that's quite generic. Every good system that you build, and when I say build, I mean you could be procuring a tool. I'm not saying that you build everything from scratch. Like, why would you? There's such great tools out there. But procure a tool and have a look at it and go, well, okay, so this panel, today we're going to have like the Japanese people and the takeaway people, to use my earlier examples. But we could just as well pivot quite quickly with this to some other change that comes up in 3 weeks' time. We can put up a very quick little panel. So look for that baseline infrastructure that can shift and move with you, and see it through that lens. If you are looking at a tool or looking at building something or whatever your system is, and you take it through this process of, could I turn it around to suit an organization that changes every 6 months or every 3 weeks, whatever your speed of change is, and it fails that test, then that is not a tool to procure, because it might be that you procure it and then it's sitting there. It's like in the graveyard, a very expensive graveyard. That is my best advice to you. What you will find over time, if you keep approaching every system with this sort of lens of which parts of this are like they're like, it's a basic ingredient of life, right? And which parts of this are flavors that might disappear tomorrow. If you question that and you keep building these basic ingredients, eventually what you end up with is enough stuff around that when a change comes and you need to respond to it, you use what you've got, right? And you put something together. So you go, oh, we're gonna have a fancy diary study tool, but we have got WhatsApp or Slack, or I don't know, like whatever thing you've got sitting around. Or we've got actually this tool that we're using for that, but it happens to have a little diary study thing in there. You'll find bits and pieces, and just make do with what you've got until things stabilize and you go, oh, actually, this is a long-term need. And so I feel like I can now actually invest in this. So does that make sense? Can
Yeah,
you
yeah,
see
yeah,
within
yeah,
your
sure.
space that you could do that?
Yeah. It's returned me to the idea that what is the basic, what is the fundamental things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Thank you.
look at your organization and find out what are the flour, eggs, and water, and
Yeah,
figure out what those main ingredients are. And just accept that it's in such a changeable space, you're going to need to be whipping up different types of things out of those main ingredients all the time. And it might not always be ideal, but that is the only way that you can operate in a world that's so changeable. You just might never get to that like perfect, final, complicated system. But in not doing that, you're actually building a system that suits where you're at, right? It suits the organization you're in, which are the best kinds of systems.
yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Serena.
Just a couple words to wrap up. We have a couple more questions. So instead of making sure that we select the winner now, we will share all the questions that people asked with Kate, and then she will define the most interesting question, and we will announce it in our R9 channel and communicate directly with the winner. Once more, huge thank you to Kate for highlighting such important topics. I'm very, very pleased to share the link to Kate's masterclass. Kate, if you would like
Thank you.
to say a couple words about it, we're happy to learn
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll be super fast. So I wanted to actually meet people in real life this year and just get back out into like having real conversations and having lunch and things like that. And so I'm running in-person masterclasses in Paris on the 5th of June. Um, there will be one in London on the 3rd of July and one in Barcelona on the 10th of July. And then I'm running one in Sydney, which is very far for all of you. But if you happen to be on holiday in Sydney in August, let me know. Um, if you're interested, drop me a line about that. It's on my website as well. But I'd be happy to offer this group specifically a 10% discount on that, but just email me about that. The day involves really looking deeply at strategy. Like, what is your strategy? What systems are you focusing on? How do you get vertical value? And for that, I've created like a beautiful big fold out paper map, a gorgeous, expensive, amazing map. So we're actually kind of working on paper and mapping things out the whole day. So it would be super to see some of you there if you can.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kate. Once more, very happy and very pleased to know that people were able to find an hour during their workday.
Yeah,
Obviously,
thank
for me,
you.
this was very, very useful. It seems like for other people on the call as well. So yeah, just once more, huge thank you.
Yeah, massive. Thank you very much. It was such a beautiful audience. Such great questions. And
Thank you
thanks,
so
Michaela, for
much.
hosting as well.
Sure, pleasure. My pleasure. Have a good one all. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.